Welcome to Android Authority on Air, the original Android Hangout show on Google+. I'm Derek Ross.
And I'm Dan Charlton.
And I'm Jonathan Franklin.
This week we're going to hit up the Android Nation that is supposedly coming to New Delhi and some other news from the Android ecosystem and maybe even some information about balloons. Are they 99 of them? Are they red? I don't know. That's a bad joke. We're going to hit up some devices such as the new Galaxy camera, some interesting devices from Samsung, Huawei's doing some cool stuff. HTC is... I'm impressed with the HTC device we're going to talk about. We're going to give away a secret code for a chance at winning a Galaxy Note 8.0. So you want to stay tuned. Once again, stay tuned because we're going to give away a secret code and a chance to win a Galaxy Note 8. And then we're going to talk about apps and some carrier news and some patents, specifically intellectual ventures. Nokia, Microsoft, they're doing some bad stuff. And you know what? And Falcon Pro, everyone's favorite Twitter client, is going through some rough times. We're going to talk about that as well. All right, so let's get started about this contest I mentioned a few moments ago. Tomorrow, Friday, we're going to officially launch a giveaway for a Galaxy Note 8.0. It's an international contest, so no matter where you're at on the planet, you can go ahead and enter. You want
a place to receive mail.
Well, yeah. If you have a mailing address, we will ship it to you. It's the 16 gigabyte Galaxy Note. It's white. It has 2 gigs of RAM. If you're not familiar with the device, a 1280 by 800 screen resolution, 1.6 gigahertz Exynos 4400. 16 gig, I think I said, 2 gigs of RAM, battery lasts for about 8 hours, 5 megapixel rear web camera. So, and it has a stylus. That's the biggest thing with the Notes, right? The stylus. I guess I should have mentioned that. It comes with the S Pen, not just a stylus. Actually, I think I downplayed it by calling it a stylus. It's an S Pen. It has over 100 different sensing capabilities.
It works better on that size of device too.
All right, so once again, we're going to give away a secret code a little bit later in the show, and what you're going to do is you're going to take this code, you're going to visit AndroidAuthority.com, you're going to go to the contest, and you're going to enter this secret code, and it's going to give you an additional chance to win. And then next week, we're going to do the same thing. For those of you that are watching the show and listening to the show, we're going to give you an exclusive chance to get another entry. So you want to watch and listen this week as well as next week for 2 additional chances to win a Galaxy Note 8.0 free of charge, shipped to any place on the planet with a valid shipping address. Thanks, Dan. All right, so let's talk about some ecosystem news before we spill the beans in that secret code. All right, so Google is supposedly planning Android Nation. I think I like that name. I'm not going to lie. We should go try to register that domain name if it's not available. If it is available. So anyways, Android Nation retail brick-and-mortar stores are coming to New Delhi. And their goal is to eventually then further spread out throughout India in the future. They're going to sport multiple handsets from different OEMs, with Spice Mobile from Asia. The stores are going to center on hands-on experiences, accessories, technical assistance from gurus like us, and experienced guys giving demos and more. Basically, it's every Android fan's wet dream, giving you all the information and devices on Android, and it's going to give you a chance to play with devices. And apparently that's not a very big thing, in India. It's a huge market, and it's tough to have people go to places to actually see all these different devices that are available to them. So that's why they're doing that there. And you know what? I'm a little jealous of that side of the world. I want to walk into an Android Nation. I want to walk in and geek out and see all the cool Google stuff, all the cool Android stuff.
Definitely, but I think Google's smart to do it in what are really still emerging markets for the cell phone industry and the smartphone industry in particular. So I think it gives them an opportunity to get in quite literally on the ground floor in India, a market with over 1 billion consumers, and really a market that Apple just hasn't been able to play in. And so it's just another way to push more and more Android everywhere.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to see how this goes. I would love to see it come to other markets, but there's a lot of talk about it. It just wouldn't work right now, at least in other markets. So I'm curious as to how this pans out. So we're going to talk about Facebook for a second. I know, Google Plus country, Google country. We don't want to talk about Facebook, but Facebook today announced that Vine was coming to Instagram, right? Oh, wait a second. No. They announced that Instagram, remember they bought them a year ago? They announced that Instagram was going to get not 6-second videos like Twitter's Vine has. They're going to get 15-second videos. Whoa. So almost 3 times as good.
Meanwhile, Google offers you unlimited seconds on YouTube.
Yeah. It's not for everybody, but Vine, has a lot of users and it's growing more popular, and brands are looking into it. So, there's obviously a market for it, but it's interesting that, Facebook or Instagram, felt the need to be able to do that. So the videos will play in your feed, but they won't automatically loop like they do on Vine over and over and over again. So you'll see the 15-second video once, and if you want to watch it again, you'll have to tap play again. Actually, I believe the update is now available in the Play Store. So go ahead and check that out. Make us some 15-second videos letting us know how awesome Android is, and share the link in the comments. And we'll check them out. So Dan, are you gonna install Instagram? Because I know you're not an Instagram user now. Are you gonna install it just to make 15-second videos?
No, definitely not. I don't really understand. Are they silent?
Well, if you don't make any noise, yes.
But if they're not, and I have my stream open, I could have potentially offensive language just randomly streaming on my computer for 15 seconds at a time.
Yeah, so it's not a photo bomb, because that's Instagram, right? So it's a video bomb. So basically, you come up with a whole bunch of obscenities and not safe for work content, and you just start streaming it in your stream, and you offend everybody that you're following, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to lose followers pretty quickly, so I would suggest to not do that. But yes. It is possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want that. It seems very intrusive. If I want to watch a video, I'm going to click on it. I don't want to just start playing. Don't you hate it when you land on a website that has some video content on it that just starts playing?
Yeah, you have some chick that comes out and she's like, hey, I'm going to use a sexy woman to sell you a product and I'm marketing blah, 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 blah. And you can't mute her and, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't really like
What kind of websites are you going to, Derek?
I would prefer not to admit this on a public forum, John.
Okay.
You know what? But the NSA knows what websites I'm going to. Oh, that's a bad joke again.
I do like that the video service provider wars are now degrading into who's offering more seconds.
Yeah, I know. It's not 10. It's not 10 hours of YouTube content.
Now Twitter's going to come back and give you 18. Oh, beat that, Facebook.
Then YouTube finally has a competitor, eventually.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about balloons, and there's well, you know what? There's probably more than 99 of them, and they're definitely not red. They're more of from what I've seen, they're more of a clear plastic, but they could be red. So anyways, Project Loon was announced, and Project Loon is putting basically weather balloons in the stratosphere to form a massive mesh network with them to bring internet connectivity all over the world. More importantly, to bring internet connectivity to places that don't have it, or it's very sparse, or very inexpensive, or very expensive. And you're looking at 3G or higher speeds, which isn't horrible when you're talking you don't have internet access. It's better than nothing. And It's pretty neat. The balloons are going to use hardware that will beam the signals, down to homes, and homes will have a special receiver on them. And coincidentally enough, the receiver actually looks like a little balloon. It's kind of cool. And the balloons will actually ride up and down in the winds in the stratosphere, so they'll be able to use that to navigate. So when a bunch of balloons start heading to an area maybe, and they're getting too much coverage in an area, and another area is lacking, they can then either make the balloon go up or make the balloon go down, depending on which draft or which wind stream they're trying to maneuver into, and then to actually steer them that way. So they'll be able to move them around and not have big dead zones. It seems like. I mean, this technology is very new, very experimental, and they're testing it out right now in New Zealand. So if you're watching us in New Zealand, try to get in on this. It's very, very interesting. I think it's very cool. Dan, John, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's something that really opens up a lot of other markets, like for business and education. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to, get the power of the internet, or even, you're talking about very heavily, agricultural places that can get information like weather and stuff that will really affect them and help them make their own lives better, really. So,
and Google execs have said at least 2 different times that I can think of in recent months that it's time to reach the next 5 or 6 billion people. Mm-hmm. There's, Google services might cover a lot of people in the world, but in the grand scheme of things, there's still 5 or 6 billion people that, Google can still reach with a service or two. And that, that's really what I think Project Loon is really about. I mean, look at, places, China or India that we were talking about with, Android Nation. I mean, in Africa, there's so many people in these places compared to Europe or United States, and there's a lot of potential for Google. These are emerging markets.
No, absolutely, and I think that Google is really trying to focus on places that just flat out don't have any access or have such sparse population densities that there's no realistic way that anybody's going to build terrestrial infrastructure to service the people in that area. There's some African officials that are kind of pushing back against it, saying, oh yeah, this sounds nice, but realistically network access isn't the problem for the people in those countries. Capable devices is the problem. It's not that they can't find a place to get Wi-Fi, it's that they don't have a laptop or a cell phone that can use the Wi-Fi. So really projecting 3G everywhere is nice, but there's already cell phone towers to do that. There just aren't any cell phones. So, I mean, it definitely has its detractors, but I think they're right in their goal of trying to get everybody online. And I think you're right in that they need to focus on other markets. As big a force as the U.S. is in world economics, half the world's people live in Africa. So you got to go where the people are.
Yep. All right, and just real quick news about some former HTC execs, and then we'll get on to some devices. You remember over the past month or so, there's been a few execs that have left HTC, bleeding and from the ranks above, and people were, crying wolf, talking about how HTC is going downhill because execs are leaving. But we're not going to talk about that because, frankly, it is what it is. But we will talk about what some of those execs are doing now that they're not with HTC. They started a company called Kazam. Yes, that's what it's called. And we don't really have a lot of details yet, except for that it's coming soon, and that they're going to heavily focus on the European market, focus on solid design, good hardware, good technology, which, really should be the goal of any smartphone company. There is no announcement what software these devices are going to run. I'd like to see them run Android. Obviously, this is Android Authority on air. But there's other open mobile OSs out there, so who knows what they're going to run. I guess we'll...
Firefox.
Yeah, they could be running Firefox. We'll find out soon enough, though. And hey, it's interesting, to see what they do. It's always nice to get another competitor out there. Consumers generally win when there's more competition.
No, wait, it's probably going to be Migo.
Migo is Tizen, so...
All right, so let's talk about some devices. John, do you want to enlighten us with some device news from around the world? I heard Samsung did some cool stuff today.
Yeah, there's really a lot of devices this week, but the first one's not really an upcoming device yet, but it's an Indiegogo campaign, and what was shown off was the concept of a motorcycle helmet. It's really kind of centering around having navigation in a way that motorcyclists can, really safely have it. And it's kind of similar to Google Glass. It's augmented reality, and the display's pretty similar, where it'll actually project an image, and the image is full color, but it's also translucent. So basically what they're proposing is that the thing is going to have two 3,000 milliamp hour batteries, for a long battery life on it. Then you'll have a microphone for voice control, and then two earphones. No clue if the earphones will allow you to play music back while you're riding, but you never know. The interface is going to be tailored to be very minimalist and focused, so you're probably not going to be able to play any games or watch any videos on the go unless you're, find a way to unlock the bootloader. It will be Android powered. Every gyroscope, every other sensor you could imagine. They're proposing that it would have LTE, and the maps would be for the entire world, and it would include points of interest, weather, traffic information. It's not really it's not just a bunch of small-time guys doing it. It's already got a lot of backing. It's a Russian project that already has a substantial amount of backing from a bunch of Russian science and enterprise foundations. Their goal is to reach $150,000 by July 12th. So if you're interested, you could search for it. It's called Live Map, and it's an Indiegogo thing.
Is it on Kickstarter?
Or
you're just spending your money to shitty Russian businessmen?
It's interesting, at least. Samsung's keynote today, part of the keynote was that they're kind of officially announcing devices they've already officially announced. Like, we're not going to cover the Active and the Zoom and all that, but in terms of new things that they've announced is the Galaxy S4 is going to be coming in 5 new colors: blue Arctic, brown autumn, pink twilight, purple mirage, and red aurora.
I'm really kind of surprised that they announced all 5 at once instead of staggering them 3 weeks apart for a press conference. Oh, look, we added it in blue Arctic this week. 3 weeks later, now it's in pink twilight. Aren't you happy?
Why didn't they announce these colors, a month, 2 months ago? This is what pisses me off. So everybody that bought them 2 months ago or yesterday, well, yesterday you can return it. Okay, so if you bought these devices 30 days plus ago, and wow, I want some blue or purple or whatever the hell they're calling them, now you can't get it. Why do manufacturers do this? At least they didn't wait 8 months or 9 months or whatever the hell the Nexus 4 was.
The Razer did it
I don't understand that. Is it that hard to colorize the shell of a device that it takes weeks and months to announce? That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm not smart enough to comprehend this because I don't work for these manufacturers. It blows my mind.
Just squirted into the mold, really.
Like, seriously.
Food coloring.
I mean,
Jesus.
You can't. Car manufacturers don't do this. I mean,
could you imagine?
And they cost thousands of dollars. This is a $100 device. All right, that's my rant.
Car, but now it's in black.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. All right, that's my rant for this week.
It's legit. It's definitely legit. One of the things they did with the S3 was kind of push the covers. You have the flip covers and stuff, and that was really the way they were wanting to go as far as your customizing it. And the S4 has that too, but they're in addition, you're getting the device if you wanted. But if you wanted to turn like a white S4 into a red or something, you're probably going to see realistically, with the way they have the band around it, you'll have a two-tone or you'll have a flip cover that you could do red and white and it would still look good. So,
Yeah.
So it's not too bad on that one. Just makes, getting a white device is probably your best bet if you want to color customize because it goes with anything. But the one of the next things that they announced was actually a Galaxy NX camera, and people think about the Galaxy camera. This is a Android-powered version of their DSLRs, and it's a very serious camera. 20.3 megapixel sensor. It has their proprietary lens mount, and it will work with any existing lenses from their interchangeable NX series. As far as the Android software, it's going to run TouchWiz on 4.2.2. It's got a 720p 4.8-inch display, and then it's got a 1.6 gig Exynos quad core and 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, 4,360 milliamp hour battery, and it's got 16 gigabytes of onboard storage with a micro SD slot for expansion.
Nice.
It looks like a very impressive, professional camera that you could do. It adds a little bit of flexibility to it. It's not something you're going to play around on the software all day, but it would be good to be able to post to social networks and things directly, from that, especially with networks like Google Plus that let you upload in full resolution. So looks like a very well designed device for what it's intended for. I think it's a step above the current DSLRs where you'd have to do so much more management as far as plugging into your computer.
And I want to buy a DSLR camera. I keep saying I want to do it. I wonder if I should drop the money for the Samsung NX.
Well, the NX series is, very professional and pretty pricey, so just get ready to dump your wallet out. But it looks like a very good camera, though.
If only it came without TouchWiz.
Yeah, you can root it and put
put
a custom ROM on it. Of course, the camera might force close.
The NX.
Dan, we could put a custom ROM on it. The camera might force close for a while, and that's the main function of it. But hey, at least run a custom ROM.
This is why I want them to release a Google edition.
A Google edition of the NX.
We should troll them at least and ask them that. The next and this was probably the one that raised the most eyebrows, I think, was the Ativ Q. And it's a 13.3-inch tablet laptop hybrid that runs both Windows 8 and Android. It packs an S Pen that I believe it works with Microsoft Office, and you can actually pin Android apps onto the Windows 8. I would say the modern UI, the Metro desktop.
The blasphemy! Ah!
Sort of.
The hardware itself, though, it's a 3200 by 1800 display on a 13.3-inch screen, so it clocks in at 275 pixels per inch.
Samsung knows how to make a high-density display? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Couldn't have told me.
Why does this not come on their Android tablets at all? But that's a beast of a display for a 13.3-inch laptop.
It's also 13.3 inches. That's huge.
Yeah. It has their advertising is having 5 modes, it's a convertible, a tablet, a stand, for typing, floating, and writing with the pen. The CPU, interestingly, it kind of mounts on a hinge, and it has, you have the keyboard and it'll dock down to a tablet, but the processor is actually built into the hinge, and they tell you that, because of that, the processor is not going to heat the keyboard up while you're using it. But the hinge kind of comes, this is your keyboard, the hinge kind of comes out right here, and the screen can float where you can have it like a stand if you're standing up and typing. You can move it, tilt it back this way if you want to demonstrate something. You can tilt it like a laptop, or you can use it like a tablet. So it's kind of a better proposition as far as how many modes it has. It kind of, every Windows 8 thing, the hybrids have been kind of quirky, but it actually looks useful. The keyboard's not so small that you wouldn't want to use it. And it's actually a real keyboard, so it does look pretty impressive. And it's a Haskell-based.
The whole dual OS mode, though, I can't get past that, John. The whole dual OS mode. I mean,
it's kind of
What are the use cases for that?
Not what you would think, and that's one thing I would say that a lot of the reviews I saw, if you're going to buy this thing, don't buy it for Android. Buy it for Windows, because Android. If you look at the Asus Trio, the Transformer Trio, the way the Asus does it is when you dock it, it's in Windows 8, but when you undock it, it's just a full-blown Android tablet. It's not trying to be two different things at the same time.
That's what one would actually call dual OS.
Yeah,
and you have all of Android and all of Windows.
On top of that, the Asus actually has a dedicated Intel Atom processor to Android, and it has a separate processor. Well, what this one does, it actually emulates Android on top of the current hardware, which is, it's got good hardware, but if you're in Android, all of the Windows 8, the charms bar that slides in from the gestures, actually you can still do the charms bar while in Android. So if your finger rolls over, it's going to, it's going to be kind of disjointed.
Yeah, that's because you aren't really in Android. You're in Windows with a full screen view of Android on top. Yeah,
you're just virtualizing it basically, which I guess if it was Windows RT, I could understand it more. But you got a full-blown version of Windows 8, I just don't see as much of a need to dual boot into Android, because you're going to be able to manage Android devices from it.
Yeah, I don't see the use of that. If you're running a full-blown desktop operating system, why do you want the Android?
Yeah, I don't see it.
That much more convenient for me to use some Android application than it is to use the desktop equivalent or the browser that's going to work better.
Yeah, and in any way, shape, it's a very impressive Windows, hybrid just by itself. But if you're going to buy one, don't buy it for the Android part. Buy it for the Windows part.
All right, so let's talk about devices you would buy for Android. Let's so anybody interested in the Shield? The NVIDIA Shield, John, Dan, you guys interested in that at all?
No.
I have a Kepler GPU on my desktop, but I'm still kind of debating on the Shield whether I would actually use it much.
It's supposed to launch here in a week, actually, on June 27th, and the price dropped to something a little more reasonable. It's down to $299 now. So if you're looking at buying the Shield to do some Android gaming, you'll be happy to know it's only $300 now. It's it's an interesting device. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big Android gamer or a console gamer. So it's not for me, but there's a lot of people that are in love with this thing and can't wait for it. So Huawei, everybody's favorite. Well, there's a lot of. I guess I won't say that because ZTE falls in that category. Anyways, Huawei from China is one of the more prominent Chinese handset device manufacturers. They announced their first, flagship, and I don't really like that term, but whatever, that's what they called it, their first flagship device, the Ascend P6. It's an almost all-metal build. It's pretty decently thin, 6 millimeters. There's no LTE, but if you look at the market that it's in, that really,
Yeah, there's also no LTE in China.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, China doesn't have that, so that's fine. You don't need to look at it and think, oh my God, no LTE. That's their market. The battery is a little small, at 2,000 milliamp hours. It's going to have a 1.5 gigahertz quad core of an unknown type. That the processor hasn't been announced yet, which is a little bit interesting. 2 gigs of RAM, 8 gig storage, but there's an SD slot, so you can go ahead and increase that if you need to. It's going to be rocking Android 4.2.2 with a heavily modified UI, their Emotion UI. So what's Emotion UI? If you've ever run MIUI or MIUI, depending on what school you're from, it looks like that. It is that. I mean, it's very, very, very close. When I first saw it at CES last year, and then their video they released this past week, the first thing that came to mind both times when I saw it was, hey, look, it's MIUI. I mean, it really reminds me of that. Dan, you used to be big into MIUI. Do you think their Emotion UI reminds you of that at all, or am I crazy?
I haven't actually seen it. I've seen some other... let me back that up. I've only really seen a couple of screenshots of the Huawei. interface.
Okay.
But yeah, it does look very much along the same lines. Realistically, I think that's just kind of the look in China.
Well, yeah, exactly. Where's MIUI from? China.
China.
I mean,
Xiaomi's in China, so
the
Yeah,
Xiaomi's in China, and ZTE, the other big smartphone manufacturer from China, their UI looks similar to this as well. They all share the same same look and feel, and that's cool. You got to go with what your users want. All right, so my favorite phone in the world, the HTC Droid DNA, also known as the HTC Butterfly. It's not my favorite phone, if you know who I am, but it is the phone I use every day. It's getting an upgrade, a replacement in the soon realm. We don't know how soon, but it was announced or teased, the Butterfly S, which is, like I said, it's the exact same phone as the Droid DNA. It's just depending on where you buy it. If you buy it in the United States from Verizon, it's called the Droid DNA. If you go to Japan and you buy it, it's called the Butterfly. So the Butterfly S was announced, and it basically looks like the HTC One got busy with the Butterfly, and they had a love child, and the love child was the Butterfly S. So it's going to have a 5-inch display, just like the original Butterfly, with 1080p. It's going to have the same processor that the HTC One has, a Snapdragon 600. But like I said, it's going to be a 5-inch screen. So you're going to have a 5-inch screen with that awesome processor, 16 gig of onboard storage, just like the current one, the current S. One more time. The current Butterfly, but the Butterfly S is going to have an SD slot. It's going to have 2 gigs of RAM, and just like the one, it's going to have an ultra-pixel camera, and it has front-facing speakers for boom sound. Boom!
Sound.
And it's going to rock a 3,200 milliamp hour battery, which, that's big, and I wish the DNA had that in it. So, I'm confused because HTC is only putting out the HTC One this year, and the
kind of like how they're not focusing on low-end markets while peddling the Desire S and the One.
Yeah, they're only putting out the One. They're only focusing on the One. Oh, wait a second. What about the One Mini? And what about the low-end crappy Desire? And
or
now
the Max or the Butterfly S.
Now the Butterfly S,
like coming to Verizon. Yeah.
So, as a DNA owner, I want this phone, and I wish my phone was this phone. But I'm curious that it's not going to have the Snapdragon 800, because new phones being announced right now are being announced with the Snapdragon 800. So I'm curious. Either this phone is going to come out very, very soon, or it's going to come out and everyone's going to be like, whoa, why are you using that when the new, this is the new thing to use. So I would bet we're going to see it soon, just for the fact that it's a 600. What do you guys think?
No, I think that's accurate. I think they've probably been planning to release this for a while, and it's just getting announced now.
Yeah, it's really focused on Asian markets anyway, so it kind of makes sense that
it's a pretty small market release. I mean, it's not even going to have LTE on board, so they clearly aren't trying to go gangbusters with this.
And that doesn't mean that they're not going to add it in the future. For who knows what they're planning on doing with it. I'm still confused that all these other devices are coming out, because HTC said 6 months ago they're only focusing on their flagship. So I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so speaking of that Snapdragon 800 that the Butterfly S doesn't have, Dan, tell us how awesome that processor is, because I saw some benchmarks yesterday, and I'm still excited over it. I can't contain myself.
Yeah, the benchmarks for it are pretty impressive. We were finally able to get some realistic benchmarks out of it, because Qualcomm invited AnandTech and Engadget and a couple of other big publications, Ars Technica I think as well, out to really show it off and show off their development platform. So they gave the press a tablet and phone running on the Snapdragon 800 and basically let them have their way with the devices. And so AnandTech and Ars Technica really put the devices through their paces. and clocked him against the NVIDIA Tegra 4 reference tablets, clocked him against the Nexus 10 for the Exynos Dual, the 5520, and the iPad 4. That's the Apple A6X, their top-of-the-line processor. And really, the Snapdragon is quite a strong performer. In some of the more processor-intensive tests, it's still losing out a little bit to the A15 in terms of per-core raw processing power, but it's really narrowed the gap down to almost nothing. But where it's really just blowing away the competition is in GPU performance. And honestly, that's kind of unexpected for Qualcomm. They don't typically make the best GPUs ever, but the GPU in this is the Adreno 330, which is a substantial improvement over the 320 that's in the 600. And when I say substantial, I mean scores on the order of double the performance of the previous generation chip. So absolutely blowing away every other Android chip maker out there, giving the PowerVR, the chips that are in the Apple A6 series, a run for its money in terms of just raw performance, and then in terms of like game simulation and sort of real world use performance is handily beating out those devices. So this GPU is really by far the best on the market right now.
It's nuts.
Yeah, and Antec even put it up against Intel and AMD desktop level graphics processors, and it's still losing to those, definitely, but it's starting to close the gap between ARM and the desktop, or between ARM and x86 graphics processing. So this is really the chip to beat. The Tegra 4 is not even out yet, and it's already looking sad and decrepit, unfortunately for NVIDIA. But they have started to talk about potentially just licensing their GPU architecture to the ARM market. So maybe that's their way.
Yeah, I saw that. That's interesting. It's almost like conceding before they even had a chance to fight.
Yeah, well, they tried the fighting, and it hasn't been going so well for them. Yeah, the Snapdragon 800 you mentioned is in all of the best things that are in the pipeline. It's been announced or rumored for the next generation Optimus G, presumably the G2. Qualcomm was there to announce the device with LG. It's also been announced, or I guess rumored, for a Galaxy S4 version with LTE Advanced for Korea. The LTE Advanced there is key because that is on die with the 800. And so all of these devices that have the Snapdragon 800 will support LTE Advanced. Even if your carrier doesn't have LTE Advanced, your device is ready for it. So definitely good for future-proofing your handset. Other devices rumored to have it are the Samsung Galaxy Note 3, the HTC One Max, or T6, which is their upcoming Note competitor, and the Sony Xperia Z Ultra, or ZU, or Togari, which I think is also their Note competitor. So all of the most massive phones on the market are going to have the most Wi-Fi processor on the market. Now let's get to our secret contest code. In honor of the Snapdragon 800, the code for this week is going to be Snapdragon. So,
all right, so for those of you that are just tuning in or missed the beginning here, I'm going to give a brief recap. So what did Dan what was Dan talking about? All right, so we're giving away a Galaxy Note 8.0. The official contest is going to be announced tomorrow. But because you love us and we love you, we're giving you an extra opportunity. So what you want to do is write down that secret code that Dan just mentioned, Snapdragon, and put a little piece of paper, put it in Notepad, save it somewhere, Google Keep. I don't care where you save it. Remember it, and then tomorrow, Friday, whenever the contest officially starts, you're going to go to the contest page. There's going to be a Rafflecopter entry form. You're going to put that secret code where it says Android Authority on Air Week 1 code, and you're going to put that code in there. And then, because you love us and we love you, you're going to watch or listen next week, and you're going to get a totally different code, and you're going to enter that code in there, and that's going to give you 2 exclusive Android Authority on Air chances to win that some people won't get. So I like those odds for a Galaxy Note 8.0. International shipping as well. If you have an international shipping address, if your mail carrier can get to you, you have an opportunity to win. All right, so let's talk about what are we talking about next? Oh, Dan's going to talk about some carrier news and some device updates, and then we'll take a question here from the audience.
Sure. So T-Mobile announced that they are going to be selling the Sony Xperia Z later this summer. The exact date and pricing are still a little bit up in the air, which is kind of sad because the device isn't exactly new anymore. But it's finally coming to T-Mobile. If you've been waiting for the Xperia Z, soon will be your time. Sony is also pushing 4.2.2 to the Xperia ZL, which makes it the first non-Nexus device to get updated to 4.2.2 rather than just ship with it. So definitely good for Sony there, updating things. Don't we wish everybody else would do the same thing? In addition to just the regular basic Android goodies, they are also getting support for 64 gigabyte micro SD cards. So if you have one of those, I think they're called XHD or something along those lines, super extra high capacity SD cards.
I think SDXC or whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that. If you have one of those, your Sony Xperia ZL will now support it. In other carrier news, there's been a lot of entertaining drama between Sprint, Clearwire, Dish, and SoftBank going on. Last week we talked about how Clearwire's board was recommending they accept Dish's much better offer than Sprint's. Sprint, meanwhile, rebuffed Dish's buyout offer for them, sued Dish over their bid on Clearwire, and upped their own bid on Clearwire to better than Dish's. And now Clearwire is recommending that their shareholders side with Sprint. So Dish is kind of getting left out in the cold here, looking like they're not going to get anything. Sprint is poised to accept SoftBank's deal and close on buying out the rest of Clearwire, though for a lot more money than they wanted to have to pay for. So Derek, how about some app updates for the week?
All right, before we hit app updates, we have a comment from YouTube saying, Derek, are you still excited about the Moto X with the rumored leaked specs? And just as a refresher, if you don't pay attention to leaks, earlier this week, EV-Leaks, famed smartphone insider that pretty much leaks a lot of stuff. I don't know how he gets his information, but he's generally more right than not. He says the Moto X will be a 1.7 gigahertz dual-core processor, an MSM 8960 Pro with 7. Excuse me, Dan.
If it's a Pro, it's going to be a quad-core.
Okay, I'm just reading what he said. 720p, 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gig of storage, 10 megapixel camera. In the front, in the rear, the front camera is going to be 2 megapixels and it's going to run Android 4.2.2. So Dan, you're saying if it's an MSM 8960 Pro, that's actually a quad-core, not a dual-core like EV-Leaks said.
Well, if it's a Snapdragon S4 Pro, then it's a quad-core. If it's an 8960 as opposed to the 8960A, then it's a dual-core and not a Pro.
So either way, it's using a processor that's a year old.
Well, it's either using one that's a year old or one that's a year and a half old.
Okay, so phones are fast enough. So I look at the processor and I say, yeah, okay, whatever. But then I look at that 720p, and then I go back to previous rumors where it was either a 4.3-inch screen or a 4.7-inch screen, and then I die a little bit inside because I need 5 inches and I need it to be 1080p. The DNA, as much as I hate that damn thing, I love that screen, and I need a phone with a big screen and a big display.
But what if this isn't the flagship, and what if it's the Razer M successor? But that would be a beast of a phone at mid-range.
So I'm I don't know. I really wanted Motorola to step up and save the day. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and confidence high that they're still going to do that for me instead of releasing a phone with a year-plus old SoC, system on chip. They might surprise us, or this phone could come out and be, you got to remember the Nexus 4 sold for $300, and it had that, the same or similar processor in it. So maybe this phone will sell for $150. I don't know. Maybe they're going to do something with the price that's going to wow us. Who knows? I want to be wowed. I want Motorola to wow me, and I'm still hopeful. I don't know if those specs are real. I don't know if I'm going to buy it. I don't know. All right, so let's. Yeah,
there's another user comment or question here about the giveaway. Is there a space in Snapdragon? No, there is not. It is one word.
And you know what? If you happen to mess up and put a space in Snapdragon for that secret code, that's fine. The winner will be checked to make sure that they entered the code, and whenever chances go down through, to be honest with you, I'll go ahead and spill the beans. It's just going to see if there's text in the field. So if you put something that isn't correct in there, like Scott Anderson never makes his bed.com, then it's still going to count as a entry. But then when I look at it and I don't see Snapdragon in there, I take it out manually. So you can spell it as horrible as you want, and as long as I basically look at it and say, hey, they're trying to spell Snapdragon, it'll be a pain that I have to go through for you guys, and I have to manually check all the entries. I will go through that pain for you, because I'm just that dedicated. All right, so back to apps. So, oh, Verizon. So instead of releasing an Android update for every phone they have except for the Galaxy Nexus, because it's already on 4.2.2. Instead of releasing Android updates for every phone except for one, they decided to give us what we really wanted, and that is a game. Verizon reactivated their Droid Landing Twitter account. They haven't used it since last November when they announced the Razr M and all the other stuff.
So glad to see it down personally.
So everybody's like, "Oh my God, they're reactivating the account. We're gonna get a new Droid device." I hate that name.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
And then they're like, "Mwahaha, we're not releasing a new device. We're releasing a game instead." We spent time and money on this game. Who cares about Android OS updates? More bloatware.
Yes, this is what your overpriced phone bill pays for. Not phone service. All of this crap you didn't want in the first place.
All right. So what exactly is this game? So it's called DCOM, Droid Combat, also available for iPhone. So it's not just exclusive to Verizon's Droid phones.
DroidCom on iPhone? Seriously?
Yeah, you can install it on your iPhone. If you go to Verizon's website, they link directly to the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. It's kind of awesome.
It doesn't work on the Nexus 4, though.
Yeah, it does. Well, yeah, because that's a Nexus, and Nexuses are the devil. All right, so what this game is, it's an augmented reality game. Sounds kind of cool, right? So basically, you're a mech. If you remember what mech warriors are, yeah, that's really what it is. You're a 50-foot tall walking, flying tank, and you swipe and you tap all over your phone to fire and block missiles. The game's free, so you go and try it. But there is in-app purchases to make your character more badass.
No way. So you can spend more money on Verizon?
Dan, you be quiet. If you buy more missiles for your mech, they will use that money for software development and update your Android device.
Can I build the in-app purchase directly to my carrier?
Yeah, can you? Okay, so moving on besides things that make me sad. Actually, no, this makes me sad too. This is a sad week for app updates. So Falcon Pro is a very popular Twitter client. A lot of people use it. I don't use Twitter that much, but I use Falcon Pro when I do get on the Twitter. the developer, remember a few months back, he ran into some issues where it became so popular that it hit the 100,000 account API token limit. Twitter limits third-party apps, so their app stays the most popular. Anyways, it hit 100,000. So he said, well, we're going to reset these tokens. So people that pirated the app, people that don't use the app anymore, it's going to release their tokens and give you a chance to, real legitimate users that want to use it to continue using it. He did that and all was hunky-dory for a while, and then he started releasing new updates, adding multiple accounts so people could add multiple accounts. But you know what? Those multiple accounts, they pull in new tokens too. So he kind of shot himself in the foot by adding multiple account support, and they hit the 100,000 API limit again. So he says, all right, we're going to reset everything. So he resets everything. People start logging back in, all is fine and well, and then boom, he kind of gets shut down. Twitter basically says, no. Don't really know exactly what's going on. The app has been pulled from the Google Play Store. And if you already have a token on there, you can go ahead and use the app, but the future looks pretty grim for Falcon Pro at this point. What do you think, John? I
don't think it's sustainable, honestly.
I mean, it's unfortunate. It's not the developer's fault. It's Twitter's business model.
I respect that he wants to support customers that, basically supported him. I understand that he wants to fight, every way he can to try to keep his app going because these people gave him money, for a product. But, at some point you just got to realize it's just not sustainable anymore. It's not worth fighting. And that's Twitter being a douche. But
so we had all sorts of other app updates. Netflix updated, Chrome updated. We talked about Instagram earlier. Instagram has an update. Asana got an update. All sorts of apps. I know a lot of people use Spotify, so we'll talk about that a little more in depth. Spotify, finally got updated to use notification toggles. Those things that are awesome in Jelly Bean that allow you to control apps, from the notification area. So Spotify now allows you to do that. Some people are saying, well, hey, it's about time. Jelly Bean's only been available for a year, so it's about time Spotify supported this. And, I think that Google Play Music, is shaking up the industry, and Spotify is like, well, we're not the only, kid in town anymore, so we better do what we can to spruce things up. And they've been doing that.
Yeah, the last update added landscape mode, and that had been missing for like years.
Yeah, no, yeah, they're and that's good. So if you're a Spotify user, that's good. You're getting updates. Me, I'm a Google Play Music All Access user, and I couldn't be happier. I paid my $7.99 last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was.
Last week.
Drop in the hat. I don't even know what that analogy means, but apparently people say that when in this situation. All right, so Dan, you want to yell about some patents?
Yeah, so Intellectual Ventures, which you may remember is a patent troll, to use the president's term for them.
Yeah, I know, that's great that he actually calls them that.
Yes, not a patent asserting entity. And Intellectual Ventures, you might also remember as a front for Nokia, also known as a front for Microsoft, has sued Motorola, or Google, in Florida. Never mind the fact that they already have an ongoing litigation against Motorola in some other state. They filed a totally separate suit rather than joining it together, just so it would be more paperwork and more costly for Google to defend themselves. And the patent that they're claiming Motorola is infringing has to do with linking URLs in emails. Yes, seriously. As in, pasting a URL into your email client, and then when you hit send, having it render as a clickable URL. Which, in fact, is just the default way that HTML functions.
I really hope that now that the United States government realizes that patents are hurting and hindering software development, now that things like this, hopefully things like this in the future can't actually be a real thing, because the fact that this is a real thing saddens me almost as much as, patenting a shape.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is seriously suing Google and claiming that they own a certain way that the internet functions for everybody. Anytime you ever type a URL into an email and press send, you are violating this patent according to Intellectual Ventures.
That sounds like a fair use, patent, Dan. It's a
the really
standard.
offensive thing about this is that this patent was ever granted. Seriously, the U.S. Patent and Trade Office should feel embarrassed that crap like this went through their office and came out with their seal of approval. It's pathetic. Clicking on a link in a URL is not something that you can patent, particularly not when it's already part of the HTML standard that is open to everybody. It's really just ridiculous.
All right, well, Dan, do you have anything else to add that we didn't cover this week?
No, that was really the only big patent news that was Android-related this week.
Okay. John, how about you? Anything we didn't hit on you want to yak about for a few seconds?
I think we pretty much covered this
All
week.
right.
Humorous with him, Microsoft and Nokia, how Microsoft almost bought Nokia, but they've degraded Nokia so much by running Windows Phone that Nokia has no value for them to justify buying them as a mobile division.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Well, I look forward to the news coming up next week, because this week was a slow news week in my opinion. Yeah, there was a couple of big things in the news to talk about, but it was a little slow. And I'd like to talk about and report Android news. So let's hope that next week is exciting. We're getting close to the end of January. A week from now will be the end of our Galaxy Note 8 giveaway. So we'll be able to talk about that. And more importantly, a week from now is the 2-year anniversary of Google+. So go ahead and start your conspiracy theories and rumor engines now about what cool thing, what awesome feature will Google roll out in a week. And also, coincidentally, the Nexus 7 pre-order becomes a year old in a week. So maybe the Nexus 7 II, the updated Nexus 7, the refresh, the reboot, the newbie, whatever you want to call it. Please don't call it the Nexus 8. Maybe we'll be able to report on that in a week, because it'll be a thing. I want it to be a thing. I want to order one. I will order one. All right, so you can find us on AndroidAuthority.com. If you're watching us on YouTube now, well, hey, that's where you can find us. YouTube.com/Android Authority, Google Plus Android Authority, Facebook.com/Android Authority, Android Auth on Twitter, Android Authority on SoundCloud. We're also on iTunes. We're also on Miro and Google Currents. We have our app in the Google Play Store where you can stay up to date and be notified every time we publish an article, all sorts of stuff. So check us out. Tune in next week for an additional chance to win a Galaxy Note 8. And if you fast forward to the end hoping to get that secret code, nope, it's hidden somewhere in the middle of the show. You have to watch. Have a good night, guys.